G'day and welcome back to the channel. On this episode we are getting back on the 1098 A series engine to go in my 1974 Leyland Mini. Welcome back to the channel, folks. Thank you very much for tuning in. Let's jump straight into it. On this episode, we are going to be doing the piston ring clearance in the A series engine. So I've already gone and done 3 of the pistons. I've already fitted the pistons to the conrods, gudgeon pins with new circlips. All those are fitted. I've checked all the piston ring gaps in both the cylinders and on the piston, including all 3 piston rings, so the compression rings as well as the oil scraper ring, and confirmed it all inside each and every one of the back 3 cylinders. So cylinders 2, 3, and 4, we're going to go through and do number 1. All right, so first thing we need to do is grab our piston rings, which are in this bag here. I'm using Hastings piston rings. It's actually quite strange because number 1 is the oil scraper, 2, 3, and 4 all actually start from the bottom, work their way up. So we're actually going to work from the top and work our way down. So we read from the left to the right, not right to the left. So all of these numbers down here, these correlate to different things, and I'll go through those in a minute. So it is important to make sure that you do 1 piston ring at a time. Sometimes they do have a nomination as to which way it goes. It might say top, it might have a dot, might have a mark, but these I've found haven't got anything. The only thing I've found is compression ring number 3 does have a dot on it, and it has a taper as well. I'll try and upload a photo. If not, it just has a little step on the inside which I face downwards. So let's get straight into it and work out how we need to get the piston ring gap correct, and also talk about why it's important. All right, so why is piston ring gap important? It's simply because if it is too tight, then you'll find that the piston ring will bind against the cylinder wall, therefore cause scraping, cause damage. It's going to do damage to the bores, the piston, and eventually result in you having to either rebuild the engine or throw out the block and get a new one. If it is too loose, it is going to let the combustion from the cylinder pass the piston rings, meaning it's going to burn oil, it's going to blow excessive smoke, it's going to be down on power. It's essentially something you really need to make sure that it is correct right from the get-go. So all we need to do is grab a piston ring, slide it into the cylinder like that. We're going to grab a piston and we're going to push it down. Now the reason why I use a piston is because it's completely flat at the top and it gives you a nice starting surface. So you want to make sure that when you push it down, it goes down nice and squarely. I generally just push it down, in this case, to the top of the start of the first groove. So this one here where my nail is, just there, that way it is a uniformed circle and line all the way around, and that way you can ensure that it's in there nice and square and you're not going to have any problems. If it's not pushed in square, you'll find it'll give an incorrect reading, so it's going to throw off your measurements. Once you're happy with where it's sitting, you can then remove the piston and start your measurements. All right, so I'm happy with where that sits. Let's move that off to the side. Now, you can use a couple of different methods to be able to work out your piston ring gap. A really good rule of thumb is 1/4 thou per every inch of bore size. In my case, I've worked it out to be approximately 10 thou gap between the piston rings. Alternatively, you can consult the owner's manual of your vehicle manufacturer, so in this case Leyland or BMC, Austin, Rover, whatever it may be, or even the manufacturer of the pistons. The original factory specifications was between 7 and 14 thou of an inch. All right, so we'll start with 8 thou. So what we're going to do is just slide it in between the gap just up here where my finger is. Might be a little bit hard to see, but essentially we're just going to slide it in and see how it is. That's actually moving in there quite easily. We're going to bump it up to 9 thou next. You do just want to make sure that you don't skip them too many at a time. Try and just do 1 at a time, because that's going to give you the best and most accurate reading, and therefore you're not just going to force it, jump the gun, and before you know it, you've caused damage to it or you've missed the opportunity to get it right. All right, so now we're up to 12 thou. It's getting a little firm. I reckon probably 13 is about where it's going to be. Funny enough, the day in which I filmed this, it was Friday the 13th. Okay, 13 goes in there, but I think 14 is going to be just a little bit too tight. All right, so 13 it is. All right, so this is where making measurements for building an engine takes a long time. We have the top piston ring, so this one here, 1, 2, 3, and then the oil control ring. So top 2 and 3 along with the oil control ring. This is doing the piston ring gap, so in the bores. We're going to start down here. So we are at 13 thou, so we need to record that. Each of these pistons were slightly different, but they're all still within specification, except number 2 piston, the second compression ring was out by a little bit, which is really a bit odd, but anyone in the comment section can let me know. I know it's only out by 4 thou, but I'm going to do a bit of research on that. This one here is between the piston ring and the actual groove of the piston itself. So we're going to measure between there. I'll show you guys how to do that in a minute. This is what takes a lot of time. You need to make sure that all these measurements are written down. That way you can be accurately building your engine and ensure that what you've done, everything is done to scratch and where you need it to be to ensure that you have maximum efficiency of the engine and also performance. All right, so you're just going to pull that piston ring out nice and easily. What I like to do is just put them off to the side one at a time. That way I know where they came from and I don't get them confused. So we've done number 1. Now we're going to jump on to number 2 and recheck. A little bit high, that one, on 17 thou, but I'd probably safely say it's 16. Now this is a third piston ring. You probably can't see very well, but there is a dot just here, and there's also a step just here where my finger is. So that step is going to be facing down, the dot's going to be facing up. 12 thou for the third piston ring. And last but not least, the oil control rings, exactly the same. They generally have a larger gap. With this build so far, I've found on an average are about 23 to 24 thou ring gap for the oil control ring. So that was 23, we'll try number 24. That's tight, sorry, that's loose. That's loose. All right, 26 thou for that one, and 25 for that one. All right, so the next thing we need to do is check the piston ring to piston gap. So this should be on average about 2 thou. We're going to start with 3 and see what it's like. It'll go in there, but it's fairly tight. I think 2 is probably where we need to be. Yep, so that's it there. We're going to write that measurement down and then proceed and go and do all the others. With the oil control ring, we do need to do that with the oil control rings fitted. We can do that last. So now that we've got our 3 measurements of the 3 compression rings, we're going to do the oil control ring last once it's fitted and check the gap between the oil control ring and the piston. The last thing we need to do is do the piston skirt to wall measurement. So we need to measure on the widest part of the piston, which is going to be the skirt, which is this piece just here. We're going to grab a micrometer and we're going to wind it in and we're going to get our measurement, and then we're going to measure the bore and then compare the two and see what the difference is. All right, so this one's about 2.64 roughly by the look of it. I think it's pretty well spot on. I'll just have a quick look on the side. Yep. All right, so we're going to write that down on the calculator. All right, then we're going to use this tool to measure the inside bore of the cylinders. All right, so now what we need to do is loosen it off at the end just here. We're going to squeeze it together, compress it in. We're going to put it inside the bore. We're going to release it. It's going to read the measurement internally. So we want to try and get this as square as we possibly can. Once we've got it square, nip it up, remove it. Then we're going to measure the outside diameter of here. And then that's going to tell us the measurement difference between inside diameter here and the outside diameter of the piston skirt.
G'day folks, Tomo here from Tomo's Tune-Ups. If you haven't already, please consider hitting that like and subscribe button to my channel. Not only will you be kept informed as to when I release new videos, but also it helps to grow my channel, my analytics, and most importantly, recommend videos to yourself and new subscribers.
Alright, so now we put it between here, we loosen that off. Put it between there just nice and gently. Always use the ratcheting end. So just up this end, never wind it in using the larger end because you will likely either crush it or give it an incorrect reading. Do that up, there we go. Nip that there, that way it locks it. All right, so we got 2.5.63, I think, by the look of it. And then what you want to do is use these indicators just along here. Whichever one lines up is exactly what number it is. So it's probably right at the very end. Sorry, right at the very start. So it'll be 61, I'm going to say. Yep, 2.5.61. So we're going to grab our calculator and then go 64 minus 61, which gives 3. That is perfect. The minimum gap between the two, we need there to be 0.00015, and now we have 0.003. So it's pretty much double the gap, which isn't too bad. As you can see, the measurements along here, we had 0018, 0031, 0026, and 0030 pretty much. So fairly uniform across to the top. Now let's go and fit the piston rings to the pistons. So I was watching an episode of Mighty Car Mods the other day when they were building the world's cheapest GTR, and there was a guy on there that showed you how to install piston rings. So I'm going to show you exactly how he did it and how I'm going to start doing it from now on. So as you can slightly see here, there is a very small stepped edge just along here that is going to be facing down. So what we're going to be doing is putting it in the groove like this. I'm just going to hold it with one finger. We're going to pull it up to the top, roll it around, down and around and on, and Bob's your Arnie. Now, none of these have a designation as to which way they go up or down, so it is important to make sure you check that before you fit them. What I've also been doing is numbering them with a paint texter. So I'm just doing a single dot. It does come off quite easily. That the way I just know which way, which piston goes to which cylinder. Now, the next thing we need to know is which way the conrod goes. The 1100s have a kicked conrod, which means they are denoted which way, left or right. So let's grab the conrod and let's have a look. Here's one I prepared earlier. So as you can see, it comes across and then steps out. So these have to face each other. So when they're number 1 and 2, they need to face each other. 3 and 4, they do the same thing. So they never face away towards the opposite cylinder. So this one is going to be facing, for instance, so this is the arrow that denotes where the crankshaft pulley is. The one on number 2 is facing inwards, so this one needs to face outwards. So it needs to face like this. I'm going to flip that upside down, slide the gudgeon pin through the little end of the conrod once it decides to line up. Oh, there we go. All right, now we just get the circlip. Now these circlips can go either way sometimes. If they are concave or convex, you want the cave facing inwards. The reason for that is if the gudgeon pin moves and it is facing inwards, it will then flatten it out. If the convex is facing outwards, when the gudgeon pin moves, it can actually push it out, causing it to come loose and then score the bore. These aren't noted in either way. They are completely flat on both sides. So all we're going to be doing is grabbing our circlip pliers, nice and gently fitting it inside the piston. Wait till we can find it. There it is. Find where it sits. Make sure that it's in there properly, which that is slightly off. You can also use the gudgeon pin as a bit of a guide as to where it needs to sit approximately. There we go, that pretty much just snaps straight into place. A good way to ensure that you know it's in the right position is to slightly loosen it and just roll it on its axis. And that way if it moves smoothly, you know that it's engaged. All right, flip it over and do the other side. All right, fantastic, that's in there. Now we have all the pistons assembled. Now we can start by putting in the 2 retaining collars for the oil control ring. So this one just goes around here first, that one goes in there, kablamo. We're then just going to grab a piston ring. We're going to slide up from the bottom, from the top actually. Oh, no, the bottom should be okay. Slide it up over the bottom of the skirt and slide it all the way down. There we go. And one's going to sit at the top of the groove, and then the other one's going to sit on the bottom of the groove. We also have the oil scraper that will go in there next. Just have to make sure it's on the other side of the oil control ring, the metal one that is. Alright. Oh, that's just jumped out of position. Alright, there we go. So make sure it's in there the entire way around. Fantastic. And lucky last, the last oil ring. Fantastic, that's in there. Now we can go and fit them inside the cylinders. So before we fit the piston inside the cylinder, we need to make sure that we fit the big end bearing. So that will just sit in there just like that. Push down, make sure it's flat on each side, and then she's ready for fitment. What we're also going to be doing is running a thin film of assembly lubricant just along here. That'll just ensure that it goes together nice and smoothly. So in this case, I'm just using a little bit of super cheap auto assembly grease. Just a nice light smear. And then all we're going to do is just turn it completely grey on the bearing surface. Now, like I was saying before, you need to make sure that the piston is facing the right way. So this arrow needs to face the front of the engine, so where the harmonic balancer is. It's going to be sitting here just like this, but before we install it, we need to lubricate the piston, the rings, and the cylinder with oil. Now, I have just received this back from the machine shop, so before we go and install it, we're going to give the engine a quick wipe down. You can use warm soapy water to clean it all off, but in my case, I'm just going to be using a little bit of brake cleaner just to remove any of the debris that may still be in there. I have already gone through and cleaned the block with compressed air to ensure that it is nice and clean on the inside. All right, so now that the bores are clean internally, we're going to grab a little bit of oil just in a cap. That's just 20 W60. You can use thinner oil, which I have been told does make it a little bit easier to be able to get the pistons inside the cylinder, just that it doesn't start to grab on the oil if it is too thick. So now that's lubricated, we're going to grab our piston. We are going to do the same thing. We're going to lubricate the piston rings around the side. So all 4 of them in our case. I'll just enable it to go in just a little bit smoother, and it'll also burn off once we start the engine up, so it's not going to be the end of the world if it's blowing a little bit of smoke to begin with. It'll burn off pretty quick. We're going to put this in the piston ring compressor, and we're going to offset the piston rings. Although the piston rings do move whilst in motion, it is important to make sure that you try and offset them as much as you can. I generally do one at about 12 o'clock. We're going to do one at about 3:30 approximately. Yep. The next one at about 7:30, and then the oil control rings will just oppose those to each other. All right, so we have the piston in the sleeve or the installation tool. We're now going to install it. You can do this a couple of different ways. I generally just use a hammer, and not the ball peen end. I just use the softer end. Generally just push it down till it starts to locate itself inside the cylinder. Once it's there, you can pretty much just push it all the way in. And that's it. Number 1 cylinder is installed. We're going to go and flip the engine upside down. We're going to attach the big end cap. Once we've attached it, we're then going to flip it over and do each cylinder individually to ensure that we don't get the caps mixed up. All right, so what you guys didn't see off camera was I was actually struggling fitting the pistons into Grace's engine. It would fit in the cylinder okay, but the conrod would not line up correctly with the crankshaft journal. Remember earlier I said that this little step has to face each other, which is true. So one will go like this and then the other one flips around like that. That way they face the same and they go in there. Essentially, I was putting it in and it just would not line up. No matter what I did, no matter how I tried or what I did, it just wouldn't line up. On the part number of the conrods, there are 2 different part numbers. 12G for golf 127 and 12G for golf 126. The part number ending in a even number goes on cylinders 1 and 3. The part number ending in an odd number goes on cylinders 2 and 4. and just so happens that I've fitted the wrong pistons to, the correct pistons to the wrong rods. Essentially, I need to swap over each one and reassemble it. So, if you're struggling to fit pistons in, that's likely the reason fit conrods onto the crankshaft. That is likely the reason. I'm unsure if it is only the 1098 and 998 engines that are like that, but if someone knows in the comments, please let me know below. I don't think 1275 is like that. I don't think. The only reason why I didn't know this is because I had to get another set of rods. They weren't labelled or marked. I was told they could go anywhere. Only through asking a couple of different people, like Cole from Classic Mini DIY, doing some research online, I found that they are different. So even numbers goes on the odd cylinders, odd numbers goes on the even cylinders. Let's get back to it.
Now, one thing we haven't spoken about when doing an engine build is checking the bearing clearances. As you can see here, I'm fitting a piston with a conrod. I'm fitting some plastic gauge between the crankshaft and the conrod bearing. I'm then torquing it up to the specified specification. I'm then removing the conrod cap and checking the bearing clearance using the plastic gauge. Now, this is something you should be checking every time you do an engine build to ensure you've got the right bearing clearance. Failure to do so will result in the engine being too tight and wearing components prematurely. More importantly, if it is too loose, you're going to have too much slop, too much movement, and it's going to cause a catastrophic failure, and therefore you're going to have to rebuild your engine again. So like I said earlier on, this is something that you need to be checking when you're doing an engine build, and the reason why also you pay an engine builder so much to be able to do all this. Now, a lot of the time, an engine builder will go and check all of these components. However, it's always good to double check. It's nice to assume that you pay someone to do a job, and unless you've been there with them doing the entire job from start to finish, always best to double check their work. Not to say that you don't trust them, but it is important to ensure you get this right, because you only want to be rebuilding your engine once.
Alright, well that's going to be it for this episode. It did take me significantly longer than what I thought to be able to put the pistons in, just due to all the conrod issues I had going around the wrong way. Some of them actually went in a different angle, like I was saying. Odd numbers, so 1 and 3 are the even numbers on the conrods, and then even numbers on the conrods are odd numbers on the cylinders. The back half seemed to be exactly that. The front half was different again, which is really odd. Anyway, so I've got the bolts all torqued up. So the mains, the conrod bolts, I'm actually going to replace these with ARP bolts. In David Vizard's book, Tuning the A-Series Engine, he does state that if you're going to do a engine rebuild on the cheap, the one thing you do not want to cheap out on is the conrod bolt, simply because if that lets go, you're going to need a new crank, a new set of rods, a new block, a new cam. It's going to snowball the problem. So I've ordered a set of ARP bolts. Once they come, I'll swap them over and then bend the lock tabs over. Next episode, let's get into fitting the camshaft. We'll do the piston at deck height and then continue on with the build. Thanks for watching. Catch you on the next episode.